Today is Friday, August 2nd. We're going to go around the bases with our MLB insider at the New York Post. He is none other than Jon Heyman. Jon, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing well. We're going to start off with the Yankees. And last time we spoke, I had discussed with you what the Yankees were going to do at the deadline, and we saw the moves that they ended up making. They traded for Jazz Chisholm. They got Leiter. They got De Los Santos. So those are the three moves they ultimately ended up going with. So what did you make of what the Yankees did at the deadline and what they ultimately didn't do at the deadline, considering the way the rest of the market developed?
Yeah, I thought they needed to do something big. I mean, look, they're a big market team, the biggest market, the biggest revenue team. Juan Soto, no guarantees he'll be back. So they're in a sort of a window, although the Yankee window's lasted for decades at this point, but sort of a window. So I thought they needed to do something big. And ultimately, since nobody did something huge, they did very well. I think they were number 5 on my list of the top 10 winners in the New York Post today. So look, Jazz Chisholm, I think he's going to be better. I mean, that's easy for me to say now. He's already got 4 home runs as a Yankee, but I think he'll be better surrounded by Judge and Soto at Yankee Stadium with a big crowd out of Miami. So I like that move. That will help them. And look, he's embraced third base, which is terrific. Personally, I think Gleyber Torres should have embraced third base, and Jazz is one of the best second basemen in baseball, but good for Jazz for going to third. Mark Leiter, kind of on the family move. I covered his father as a Yankee beat writer, Mark Leiter Sr. I didn't know he was going to be Mark Leiter Sr. at the time, but he is. And, I think he was good in Chicago. So I like that move as well. They didn't get the closer. They didn't get a big starter. We know they tried for Flaherty. Didn't work out. They called on Snell. He wasn't traded anywhere. Considering what happened at the deadline, I think they did well.
Yeah, Jon, I think the biggest thing Yankees fans are now a little bit hesitant about is the closer role. And to your
Yeah,
point,
I get it.
but there really wasn't that many closers out there. I mean, Tanner Scott was probably the biggest piece available at the deadline, and we saw what the Padres gave up for him. I don't think the Yankees were going to be willing to go there, and I think you wrote about this with, their top prospects in Spencer Jones, Jason Dominguez, George Lombard. It didn't seem like they were willing to part with those guys for a guy like Tanner Scott. What did you make of that?
Well, I made the Padres my big winner because they have a lockdown bullpen now, and they're going for it. They're only 4.5 behind the Dodgers as we speak, and certainly we think Musgrove and Darvish will be back. I get it. People don't want to give up prospects. The only ones willing to do that is AJ Preller. He's given up a lot of good players in the past. When he got there, it was Trey Turner, Max Fried. He gave up Clase later. Obviously, the big trade for Soto. He gave up 3 big prospects, including James Wood. He's the one guy willing to give up prospects. And I guess if there's a big piece out there, you should probably bet on him to get it. He got Soto 2 years ago at the deadline. This time it's Tanner Scott was the biggest piece out there in a sense. I mean, with all the contenders
Yeah.
wanting a closer, he's having an incredible season, hasn't given up a run since June 13th, obviously was an all-star, 1.18 ERA as he goes to San Diego. But it is funny, it was not predictable because they have the best closer in baseball in Robert Suarez. So now they have arguably the 2 best closers or 2 of the best closers. They already traded Clase a few years ago, but
Right.
2 of the best closers in the game. Lockdown pen, they also got Jason Adams. I get it. They gave up some very good prospects. Robbie Snelling was the minor league pitcher of the year a year ago. But looking at the records now, the 4 guys that they gave up in that trade, they were all having bad years. And we're talking about guys at Class A. Even if you're the minor league pitcher of the year, one year doesn't mean you're going to be great every year. And they are prospects, right? I mean, are they going to turn into Clayton Kershaw? I kind of doubt that. If you go back and look at the history of trading prospects, most of them don't become Max Fried or Trey Turner or whatever. And same with San Diego. Most of them have not become those kind of stars. So they have a lockdown bullpen. They're going to have Musgrove and Darvish back, and they may end up winning that division.
Yeah, definitely an interesting situation to see how it develops there in the NL West. Finally, for the last thing with the Yankees, Jazz Chisholm. I mean, the guy had quite the debut for the Yankees this week in that Phillies series, 4 home runs in 2 games. What are you making of him and his impact? Because there were not many bats traded at this deadline, Jon.
Right, and he had a 101 OPS plus with the Marlins, so that was pretty well league average. But I think the Yankees did their homework on this one. They talked to several people. Obviously, there were a lot of ex-Yankees in. I don't know exactly who they talked to, but Don Mattingly was his manager. Kim Ang was the general manager of the team. There are a lot of people with Yankee ties there. who know Jazz, and I think all of them like Jazz. I get it. He's had some issues with different little things, like he came out and ripped Miguel Rojas, which really wasn't appropriate, not needed. But you know what? That's not the end of the world. That doesn't make him a bad guy. And he is very talented. He's embracing third base. He wants to win. He's been cooperative. He's probably thrilled to be around Judge and Soto and in New York. And, obviously we're only a few days into this, but looks like a great move. And I didn't really address the Yankees and the closer situation. Look, Holmes was an all-star. I get it. He's not really a swing and miss guy. He does have a strikeout in an inning, but and I get that he blew his fifth save in 7 opportunities against Philly, but there were, what were there, 3 or 4 soft grounders. He is a good pitcher. Would he be better as a setup guy? I think so, but yeah, I mean, I think you have a good point that the prices are high. Preller's willing to pay him. 28, 29 other GMs probably not willing to pay him. Finnegan never got dealt. Fairbanks never got dealt. I don't know if they were close on either of them, even though there were reports suggesting they might have been. Estevez went earlier for a lot to Philly. Looking back on it, should they have beaten Philly to Estevez? Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that now, but at the time, you still had Scott, Finnegan, and Fairbanks out there, right? 3 viable closers. And so I'm not going to second guess them now. It looks like they had a better deadline than most.
Yeah, and I think Leiter Jr. is an interesting prospect. I mean, for not prospect, you say, but he could be a good piece for them in that bullpen. I mean, his sinker and curveball, he's got some nasty pitches and he's got some strikeout potential to him. So
yeah,
I was impressed to see him.
He's thrived in his 30s, right? He's over 30 years old, and he was very good for Chicago. Not really sure what the Cubs are doing. They had Paredes. They try to thread the needle. I'm never in favor of that. I don't think that ever works. And then you end up trading the guy who was one of your better relievers when you're still on the cusp of the race for what? The Yankees didn't give up some great prospects for Mark Leiter. So I found that odd. I thought maybe they would trade Neris, who's a rental veteran who was not doing it as closer for them. I really, it's easy for me to say because I'm not in the room, so I don't know exactly what's going on with the teams. But I think that was a coup for the Yankees to get Mark Leiter. I agree.
Yeah, and we're going to be excited to see him tonight. We're excited to see Jazz in the Bronx, see how that kind of reception is going to be. But John, let's talk about the other team in New York, the Mets. They addressed a lot of the concerns that we thought we had about this team. A couple bullpen arms. They got the guy that you had predicted in Jesse Winker, which I thought was fascinating. And then they went and got Paul Blackburn after the Kodai Senga injury. So what did you make of what the Mets were able to do at the deadline?
Well, I mean, they didn't want to give up their prospects, their top guys, Jed Williams, Gilbert, Clifford, Acuna, Tidwell, certainly Sproat, who may join them at some point. He throws 100, so that's a bullpen possibility. They did it more with quantity than quality, maybe, but Brazoban may surprise us. He's got some potential to be pretty good. He's a veteran. I get it, but they brought in guys who could help that bullpen, which is really what they needed. And they needed a starter after Senga went down. I'm hearing Senga's possible for the playoffs if they get to the playoffs, but not definite, but definitely out for the regular season. And it's good to get a solid guy like Blackburn, kind of an under the radar guy. They kept all their big prospects. I get it. They don't look like a World Series contender, but as I've been saying all along, they should be a playoff team. They are a good team. It's not going to be easy, though, right? I mean, look, Arizona's much better. They've got guys coming back. San Diego is much improved. Not going to be as easy as, I made it out to be probably 2 months ago, but certainly got a good shot at the playoffs, and I think they handled things appropriately.
Yeah, it didn't seem like, to your point, the prices were astronomical on some of the biggest pieces. I heard a lot of rumors about would the Mets go get Blake Snell? Would that be a possibility? But for them though, their lineup is so deep and it's very good. And they addressed that one need in Winker getting another bat. And Blackbird's a solid pitcher. And I think he can handle what they're asking him to do and step into that role. Because with Senga back, it seemed like they were going to go to that 6-man rotation, but now they could stick with the 5-man rotation. They have Jose Buto, who you heard Mendoza say he's trying to lengthen him out a little bit. I don't know. The Mets are a dangerous and fun team to watch down the stretch to try and make that wild card.
I mean, they got a deep lineup. They got a deeper rotation than most. I like the Blackburn pickup. We'll see how he does. I could be proven wrong tonight, but
Tonight. Yeah.
you know what? They kept their big prospects. Snell to me didn't make any sense for them. I'd heard six other teams involved with Snell. I hadn't heard that. I don't know where you heard that, but who knows? I heard the Mets checked in on 100 pieces, so 100 players. So I would maybe they did check in on Snell. I mean, I heard Yankees, Orioles, Padres, Dodgers, Texas, and Cubs. But in any case, they didn't ultimately trade him. I do think they listened intently. I will say this. I think the Tigers only listened a little bit on Skubal. That wasn't a real thing. That was more of a media fiction. That would, to me, makes a little more sense for the Mets than bringing a guy who's making $30 million now to a team that's really, basically trying to get that fourth, fifth, or sixth spot. I mean, we'll see what happens with the Braves too, but fourth, fifth, or sixth spot in any case. And I just think that they did the right thing in going for the quantity in the bullpen, getting the extra starter when they needed it, and Winker had the 139 OPS against the right-handed pitching, and they weren't too satisfied with DJ Stewart, and that's what they were looking for, left-handed. So I looked on the list. Left-handed bats. I mean, Conforto, that would have been interesting, right? I'm sure they checked in. He certainly was very good as a Met. He's been okay as a Giant, a little bit better lately, but Winker was the guy who fit, even if the fans in the past didn't like him. I think they're going to embrace him now, though.
Yeah, I would agree. He's definitely an upgrade over DJ Stewart. John, let's move on to the next topic here. The rest of the MLB trade deadline. What did you make of it? The moves out there. It seemed like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like a very tamed deadline. Like you kept saying, it's a seller's market, Ryan. It's a seller's market.
Yeah.
The prices just are going to be astronomical for a lot of these teams. And I don't know. What'd you think, man?
Well, it felt fast and frenzied to me, but I'm in the middle of it, texting left and right and trying to come up with bits and pieces of information. But ultimately, as you look back on it, right, the two biggest pieces traded deadline day were Flaherty and Tanner Scott, a rental reliever and a rental starter, apparently with a back situation. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I like the teams that go for it, and both sides, buyers and sellers. So I like what Miami did, getting 18 prospects. I like what Tampa did, 14 prospects and 3 position players. I think Christopher Morel will be better for them. And I like what the Dodgers did getting Flaherty. I like what the Padres did getting that lockdown bullpen with Adam and Scott. So those are my 4 winners. Obviously, the Yankees are looking pretty darn good right now with Jazz Chisholm. But, I get it. There was no Juan Soto. There was no Yu Darvish. We had past deadlines where those guys were traded. But, I've been there before when I think the Orioles got like a number 3 starter. I can't remember his name, kind of a round fellow. And that was the big move on deadline. It was basically one trade. So, we're better than that. It isn't that shocking considering about 2/3 of the teams consider themselves potential contenders, if not contenders right now. So many more buyers than sellers. Most GMs holding tight to prospects other than Preller. And then you had teams that, you clutched guys who have limited control, mostly not the rentals. I mean, Colorado didn't trade Elias Diaz. I just don't think they got much there. But mostly it was guys with a year of control to go. I would have thought the Angels would have traded Anderson, Rengifo, and Ward. My understanding from other teams is they were asking a lot for Ward and Rengifo. Anderson, he's got an ERA like Flaherty. He's done really well. He was deserving. I'm not sure if he made the All-Star team, but I think he did. He was an All-Star. I was there. I should know. He was an All-Star. But I think the market really wasn't there for him. People aren't fooled by a good ERA or an All-Star. They looked at the expected ERA. There's other stats now that they look at, and his expected ERA was like 4/4. So I don't think he had a market. So it was a little surprising. And some of these also didn't trade guys with 1 year to go. Certainly the Jays, and I've written this several times, they should have traded Vlad Guerrero. I get it. The fans would have been upset, blah, blah, blah. He's got 1 year to go. He and Bichette.
But they could lock him up long term if they wanted to, right?
Well,
John?
good luck to that. They've tried. They're hundreds of millions apart right now. I mean, I don't know exactly. Sure, you could guess that. And he is not opposed to Canada, right? Like Bo Bichette is not going to be locked up. He's just going to be gone. He doesn't want to. From everything you hear, he doesn't want to be there. Vlad Guerrero, his dad was a star in Canada for the Montreal Expos, as we know, and I think he's not opposed to it, but they were tens of millions of dollars apart. He's a year from free agency. He's a big star. Did we think Pete Alonso was signing with a year to go? We didn't think that, right? Why are we now saying Vlad Guerrero, they can lock him up, right? They're not locking him up.
Okay.
It's not happening. Anyway, they should, even if they lock them up, they're not as good as Baltimore or the Yankees. They're not going anywhere. I know they're selling it to their owner, their fans, whatever. And I know their fans are upset because they thought they were getting Ohtani or Soto or whatever, and they didn't get them. And the team isn't good, and I get it. But it take guts. It's easier to do in Tampa, right? If you're in Tampa, even though you've got a winning record, you're 2 games from the playoffs with limited media and fans that they're okay, they're fine with the guys getting traded, whatever. You can trade half your team, but if you're in Toronto, it's difficult, but yet sometimes difficult things need to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one last thing I wanted to ask you about was Garrett Crochet. The fact that that unique
Yeah.
situation didn't develop. We heard his name a ton going into the deadline, and I think you could explain more about what his situation was and why it was so difficult to trade for him.
Right, and I sympathize with him. And we had that story at the Post that if he's going to a contending team, he's going to want an extension to pitch in October. It's an unusual situation when you have a star, an all-star. I know I was there. He was an all-star, and the guy leading the American League in strikeouts for the worst team in baseball,
Yeah.
maybe the worst team in history. And his innings are up 1,000%. That's right. I did the math. He had 12 innings last year. He's going on 120 innings at this point. I sympathize. I get it. Fans don't want to hear this. Go ahead, pitch your heart out. But I mean, with the proliferation of injuries, I mean, it's an epidemic at this point, and he's only made 800,000. He's at the All-Star game. There are guys that are pocketed 100 million, 200 million, 300 million.
Yeah.
To keep going forever, I think it's a miracle that he starts every fifth day and strikes out more than anybody after he was a reliever, throwing 12 innings last year. Off of Tommy John, he's already had one Tommy John. So I get it, but when he came out and said that, I think the market just dried up. I know there were stories afterward. They're still going to be able to trade him. Teams won't be scared off. If he goes to the Dodgers, is he really going to say to Clayton Kershaw, I'm not pitching in October and all that stuff? I think the market dried up and they just weren't able to trade him. It's been that kind of year for the White Sox.
You ain't kidding, John. You are not kidding about the White Sox. Finally, speaking of the White Sox,
Yeah.
but let's ask you, what is the most disappointing team of the week for you, John?
Yeah, thanks for tipping it off. I mean, what are you going to do? I can't go away from a team that's lost 17 in a row. We'll keep it brief. I think they've been the disappointing team of the week about half the weeks. But, I mean, what a situation that it is. I mean, somebody out of their clubhouse texted me one word the other day, Titanic. And I think that is a fair word for it. And another guy on the White Sox, before the deadline was up, I said, what's up? And his answer was, we're all still here, unfortunately. It's a tough situation to be in. They are on pace to beat the 62 Mets for the worst record in baseball, modern baseball history. And until they win a game, and if they go 1-6, they're not disappointing. That's a big week. That's a week to celebrate. So next week when we do this, when they win one game this week, they will not be the disappointing team of the week for once.
17 game losing streak, unbelievable.
Right.
It's a sight to see. John, thank you as always for going around the base with us and giving us the latest on all the trade market and the way the deadline went down. And appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.